Hey guys, I'm Grestar, and how about we talk Sword Art Online? So I want to make two things perfectly clear before we really begin. First, this video will contain spoilers, but the first little bit of this video will be spoiler free, or at least within like the first episode or two. So you really, it's not going to spoil too much for you if you want to stick around. And then I'll get into spoilers and I'll warn you before I do it. Second, or two, because I don't remember how I prefaced it, I have only watched the first plot arc, which is like the first 14? Okay, I just googled it to be sure. The first plot arc contains 14 episodes, so that's as far as I've seen, and I wanted to make this Let's Talk before actually seeing more of the series. So keep in mind that my knowledge is going to be limited. Do not spoil things for me in the comments, even if I say something and you know the answer because you've watched more. Don't reveal it, don't spoil it for me or for other people. And just be aware that, again, my knowledge is limited. I can only talk about what I've seen and what I know from those first 14 episodes. So that's about it. I know one thing I like to do is I like to give you guys the genres, at least according to Analinks. So according to Analinks, which is a site where you can watch anime, the genre is action, adventure, drama, fantasy, game, romance, sci-fi, thriller. So if those appeal to you, this might appeal to you. And the basic premise of this anime is that the characters start to play a video game, a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, an MMORPG called Sword Art Online. And so they put a helmet on and it sends their brains and the functioning or whatever. Basically, it makes them feel as though they're actually in the game. But it's one of those that, the recycled kind of plots where if you die in the game, you die in real life, so stuff gets real. Again, this happens in like the first episode, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. But yeah, they go in to play the game thinking it's just another game, another MMORPG on the market. But then they find out that they can't log out because the creator of the game has disabled that feature, wanting to create a world of his own, to like be a god. So they're all trapped inside of Sword Art Online, and he says that the only way to get out is to beat the game. Whoa. So now there's the risk of player killing, of getting killed by monsters, of, just if you die in the game, you die in real life. So stuff is bad. And I won't talk about this, at least in this part, but they do have ways of like, well, can't you just get out of the game by other means? No, you are actually stuck in the game unless someone beats it. And if someone beats it, then it's done for everyone. Everyone gets to leave. But someone has to beat the game, otherwise you are trapped or you die. And that's probably all that comes to mind that is actually like completely spoiler free, or completely, again, within the first episode that I really would want to talk about. So aside from that, we're gonna move into spoiler territory soon. Again, I've only seen the first 14 episodes. I don't know how many episodes there are total or how many plot arcs there are, but I will say that from what I saw, I did enjoy watching Sword Art Online. However, I don't think it's a good anime. It's kind of weird to talk about and even to think about because, yeah, I had a good time watching this show. I enjoyed the characters for the most part, and I enjoyed watching, the fight scenes or the interactions or whatever, but it just wasn't good. If I had to simplify it how I could, I think the best way I could put it is that I feel like this anime was rushed and forced. Things happened too quickly, they tried to introduce too many things and just like move it along, and so much of it was left unexplained, or at least not to the point where I was satisfied, that it was just forced, like it was crammed down my throat and I just kind of had to accept it and watch as the anime moved on. Or in the same sense, if they just wanted to keep something moving, they made it happen really quickly, they just kind of forced it. They're like, yeah, this is how the character feels and this is how you should feel, and now we're gonna move on to this thing. And it didn't work all the time. So yeah, this is one of those weird moments where I enjoyed it, but I was also disappointed. I felt like this series had a lot of flaws, and some things that I think could be fairly easily remedied. Okay, maybe it's not fair to say easily remedied, but there could have been better ways to at least approach and handle some of the things that were approached and handled in Sword Art Online. So I think at this point I have actually covered everything that is spoiler free. Would I recommend this anime? I don't know. I don't think that I actually could solidly recommend this anime. Even though I enjoyed it again, I don't think that it was great. A lot of flaws. I was disappointed. Like, the premise to me was really cool. I was really excited to see how this would play out, and it did not play out how I would hope. I know that other people really love this anime, and I know that other people hate this anime, so I can't say that I recommend it. I can just say that I enjoyed it for what it was, and you could give it a try. After all, while I have my doubts, I don't know if it would get better as the series went along. Maybe it would explain some of the things that I had issues with, or maybe it would suck worse, I don't know. But it's kind of one of those things where you just have to take a chance, and if you like it, that's great. If you don't, whatever, stop watching it and move on. But yes, we are heading now into spoiler territory, so if you would not like to be spoiled, then please click off this video. Thank you for watching, and we're going into spoiler territory officially in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. on? Okay, let's go. Now, for those of you who stuck around, again, spoilers now, but I don't have any like set course in mind. I'm kind of just going to talk about what comes to mind, whether they were little things that annoyed me or things that I thought were rather big flaws that could have used a lot more attention. So let's get going. The first thing that annoyed me is really petty, alright? So you guys have to be prepared for this. I felt like there were too many pretty characters in this show. Pretty characters? Riz, this is an anime! Yes, but in this anime, we do see that there are plenty of ugly characters. There are unattractive characters in this show, but there were just so many attractive ones too. And why that bothered me is that this is an MMORPG, you know, this is a video game for nerds essentially. Not to say that, you know, other people can't enjoy this, but to speak about stereotypes, and stereotypes exist for a reason because they're typically true. There were just a lot of people who I felt would be spending their time doing other things. Let's look for instance at Rosalia. And by the way, I watched it again with Japanese dubbing, English subtitles, so if I pronounce names oddly, I do apologize. It's Rosalia, I guess, in English. But yeah, she was like the leader of the Orange Guild, the, you know, player killing guild who did it all sneakily so they wouldn't actually get in trouble or get... I forget what the penalty is, but they did it in a way where it wasn't all bad for them, or at least for the leaders. Right, but the point was, she was really attractive. Now again, on top of this being an MMORPG, where I just think some people would not be playing this, you have to keep in mind that Sword Art Online was just barely released, like the game inside the anime. It was barely released. It had only been out for, I think, you know, a number of hours in that day, and there were only 10,000 copies initially released. So that means that those people had to first be in line to get, you know, one of the first 10,000 copies, the first and only 10,000 copies, and then they had to actually play it within those few hours that, you know, it was open before the media, you know, the news and everything started saying, this is a trap, don't go in the game, you know? Like, there's a small window, even for the people who did buy the game, before they would actually, like, be stuck inside of it. And so it was weird to me just how many people not only got the game, but also played it right away, got stuck in the game. Again, it's a very minor thing. It didn't it didn't make me enjoy the anime less. It just made me take a step back and be like, I feel like this wouldn't happen. But I don't know, whatever, who am I to say? Tied to that fairly closely is that there were a lot of really young children, and at one point in the anime we actually go to, in the main city, or the first town, I guess, where all the players started, there was a little daycare for all of the kids, and there were a lot of kids. Now, if I remember correctly, RuneScape back in the day was, you had to be 13 years old to play it. Granted, I made my first account when I was like 11, I think, so obviously I broke the rules. But to think that there were that many young children who, you know, were also breaking the rules, who had one of the first 10,000 copies, who all had permission from their parents to go in and play. And again, if RuneScape is, you know, like 13 or older, then Sword Art Online would definitely be 13. I could see Sword Art Online easily being mature because you're actually in the game fighting monsters. Like, that would be pretty traumatic for some people. So on top of having all the attractive people in there, to have all of those little kids too, it's like, this is just kind of stretching, you know, what I can believe. And that's saying something considering this is one of those, you're in a game and if you die, you'll die in real life. Like, if I can accept that reality, but then when I start questioning how many pretty people or how many really young kids there are, it's just odd. Again, it didn't super detract from the story to me. It was just weird. Now, I think this ties into possibly my biggest complaint, but it's not my biggest complaint, and so I'm going to say it here now, and I think this is what a lot of people who are watching this Let's Talk might be interested in hearing. I'm going to talk about Kirito and Asuna. That's right, the romance that everyone hates. And I kinda hate it too. Now, this is why I hate it. To me, the romance kinda came out of nowhere. Like, Kirito, I did not see any interest from Kirito, and from Asuna, it was just one of those things where it's like, bicker, 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 mwah. Like, oh, that came out of nowhere. Like, there was one scene that happened, I think, before, you know, Asuna started, you know, being obvious about liking Kirito. But aside from that, it was just kind of out of the blue. Of course, though, credit where credit's due, something did happen later on that actually made me think, okay, thank you. Like, I was actually really happy that the anime brought that up. And it was at one point, they were talking to a fisherman dude, and Asuna talked about how she fell in love with Kirito. And I understood it. I'm like, okay, great, thank you. That's the explanation that I wanted. You know, what the kind of thing that I would want to see between the two. Now I understand why Asuna has feelings for Kirito the way that she does. However, I never got that same thing for Kirito. I don't know why he felt that way for her. For a while, I was actually questioning whether or not he really did, or if he just felt obligated, or if he was humoring her kind of thing. Eventually, you know, like as time passed and they're together, married and everything, which I'll touch on in a second. You know, I did start to think, okay, this is what I think people in love would act like, so I can buy the romance once it's established. But I didn't buy how it was established. So, like, the process of them falling in love, I did not buy that. I did not understand that. I did not feel that it was adequately portrayed at all. I was glad that they went and touched on why Asuna fell in love with Kirito, but... And, you know, and then once they were in love, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can believe that. But I didn't see how it happened. I just saw the result, and that was a little frustrating. Especially when, in my opinion, there were two much better, like, alternatives to Asuna. The first alternative, in my opinion, the better one, was Lisbeth. See, I said that in the English one for you, mostly because that one's a little harder to say in Japanese for me. But anyway, I thought that Lisbeth, the blacksmith girl with the pink hair, I thought that she was actually rather cute. At first it was kind of annoying, but she actually played a good antagonistic role to Kirito in a way where I could see how romance would form, whereas Asuna just did not for me. I would much rather have seen more happen with Kirito and Lisbeth than with Kirito and Asuna. I mean, there was even more of a bonding moment between the two than there was with Kirito and Asuna, but it just didn't really go anywhere because then, you know, Kirito and Lisbeth are back in the blacksmith shop and they got the crystals that they needed for Kirito's sword. And then, you know, Asuna comes back in and she's all, oh, Kirito, you're here. And Lisbeth is all, oh no, is this the boy you're talking? This is the boy that you wanted to go on a date with? And then Lisbeth is all like, oh, I'll just leave you guys be. And then she goes and cries. And I'm like, no, you were the better option. So yeah, could that just be because I liked Lisbeth better as a character for how little time we saw her? Yeah, I'll totally admit that, you know, my personal bias can come into this, but as it should. These are my opinions, that's how they work. But what it means is that I was disappointed that they forced the Kirito Asuna bit so hard that even though they weren't showing as much, you know, like development between those two as I thought they did Kirito and Lisbeth, they still ended up making it Kirito and Asuna instead of, and they just shoved Lisbeth off to the side, like she was hardly even mentioned after that point, and that bothered me. Now the second option, which I think is the worst of the two options that I laid out, but still better than Asuna, would be, I forgot her name so I had to look away, Shirika or Silica, you know, the young girl. And I get the issue that, oh, she's young. Yes, I get that. However, do you guys know how young she was? 12 at the beginning. Do you know how old Kirito was at the beginning? 14. So really, I don't think that that's much of a difference. I really don't. Do I think that Silica or Shirika or whatever is too young to be in that kind of relationship? Yes, I do. But do I also think that Kirito, 14, 16, was too young to be married? Definitely so. So if I'm going to look at valid romance options, given what I had to work with in this series, between Kirito and Asuna, Kirito and Lisbeth, Kirito and Shirika, then I thought that, you know, Kirito and Lisbeth, best one. Shirika, better. Asuna, worst of the three. But again, there seemed to me like there was a lot more bonding between Kirito and Shirika, that there was just like more of a connection between the two. Granted, the connection might have been a little bit awkward because Kirito saw her as like a little sister, because that's who she reminded him of, his little sister. But I just saw more there between even them than Kirito and Asuna. And I definitely thought that Shirika was a lot cuter. I mean, she's just so cute, like the way she's like flailing at the whatever plant thing that has her upside down, and she's holding her skirt up and screaming like, ah, don't look, you know. It was adorable, so shut up. Yeah, I mean, that's what really bothered me. And it's not even the fact that, again, Kirito didn't go for Lisbeth or Silica or Shirika. I'm just gonna jump back and forth, I'm sorry. It's more the fact that he went with Asuna, despite the fact that I think he was better paired up with one of the other two, and they just did not put enough effort in to explain Kirito and Asuna's relationship, how they got to where they ended up. And what makes it worse is how reliant the plot was on that point. And when I say that, and this is kind of a semi-spoiler, and I know we're in spoiler territory, but I don't like to give away the big things without like covering ears and everything. But yeah, the ending totally would have been different had Kirito and Asuna not been together. I actually wanted to talk about this a little bit earlier, but I'll just talk about it now. Another thing that was forced and that didn't even lead anywhere was Kirito's character development, in my opinion, but obviously this whole video is about my opinion. Does anyone remember Sachi? Yeah, I refer to her as the sacrifice girl, because what happened is Kirito wanted to be a solo player, because he was afraid that he would join people and then he didn't want to watch them die kind of thing. But he finally joined a guild. Sachi was a member of that guild. She was afraid of dying, and so Kirito promised her that she wouldn't die. And as soon as he did that, I just wanted her to die immediately so we didn't have to drag on that inevitability of her death. Because as soon as you get a character like her and a promise from a character like him, you know she's gonna die. Just make it happen. And so she dies, and she leaves Kirito this touching message about how it's not his fault and everything. And he doesn't change. From that point, it's only solidified that he's not going to work with anybody, that he's going to continue being a solo player, and so why did that even happen? Because we needed him to be more brooding and more angsty? Because we didn't. I mean, I just never really saw that point, like, returned to. I didn't see what the deal with it really was. Again, like, he made this brief connection, he joined a guild, everyone died, especially her. I mean, she didn't especially die, but she died too, and that's what meant the most to him. But then, even with her forgiveness and everything, and saying that it wasn't his fault, that he wasn't the one responsible, he still didn't seem to change to me, so I didn't get it. Now, I think I almost have said everything about that I really want to say. There are other things I could talk about, but I think I've said about everything I really want to say. So before I go on to what I thought was the worst part about this series, I want to touch on some things I thought were cool, that I really liked. First, again, just the concept and the feeling overall that this anime gave. I really liked the idea of being sent into an MMORPG, and the whole, you know, like, if you die in the game, you die in real life thing. I'm behind that. That was a cool option, I thought. And then within that, I liked the fact that they had, you know, glitches that people were exploiting. Like the whole, you know, if you sleep, then someone can use your own hand to accept a duel, and then that's how they could kill you, even in the safe zone of a town. Just the fact that there are safe zones in towns, I thought was cool, because that's video games, and I like video games. These two things aren't exactly good, but I just thought about them, so I'm gonna say them now. I apologize for interrupting this happy, positive moment. But two things. At the beginning, Kirito was talking to Krain, and he mentions how, like, we need to go to the, you know, skip one town and go to the next or whatever, because, like, experience is limited, but I don't think it is, or maybe I misunderstood, because eventually, you know, you see guilds that are farming monsters. If you don't know what farming means in an MMORPG context, it's when you, like, you know, you camp at spawn points, so you do something over and over again, in order to, like, grind experience. So I don't know where he got the whole thing where the experience was limited, because the monsters just kept respawning. Unless I missed something, I didn't get that. I also didn't understand how the attacks actually worked, because again, in the beginning, Kirito shows Klein, English, how to attack, because Klein couldn't get it to work. And you had to, like, position a certain way and then do it or whatever, and then it suddenly worked for Klein. But then throughout the rest of the anime, you don't see those same positions. You see people with their own fighting styles and everything, so I feel like they kind of ditched those concepts, or again, I misunderstood or I missed something. I don't know. It's totally possible. I haven't watched the anime in a little bit. This is me going off of my memory. And they're things that I continued to wonder about as the series went on. But to go back to things I liked, I really liked the fact that there were different skills, and that as you, like, progressed in that skill, you were just better at that, and that was a thing for you. That really reminded me of RuneScape, and actually, after watching this first plot arc, I started playing RuneScape again. I got really into it again. I'm still playing it now. It's just been a lot of fun. I liked that aspect of the show. There was this little subplot about, like, these murders that were happening, and no one could figure out why, because, like, the exploits weren't being used or whatever. And it was like a ghost story. I forget everything, but it was, you know, a guild, and they had found this ring, and they were gonna sell it, but then, you know, someone died or whatever. But it was really cool how it worked out, because they made use of the fact that people could create items, and that those items could have, like, certain health values or whatever. And it was just interesting. Again, it was the fact that they were playing with game mechanics inside the anime, which was, you know, taking place in a video game, and I just really appreciated that. I thought it was really clever and creative. And then they used that again, later on. This is kind of unrelated to what I was just barely talking about, but I'm going to spoil something here, so until I move my hands from my headphones, don't listen if you don't want to be spoiled. So, we know that in the end, Heathcliff That was his name, right? Yeah, Heathcliff. He was the big bad guy. Like, he was the developer of Sword Art Online. He was the game master who, you know, he put himself in as a player. And I thought that was interesting. I wonder if he was able to jump back and forth because, you know, he was a developer. Otherwise, is he also in a hospital? I don't know. But that would be kind of suspicious if he were jumping back and forth. Anyway, I like the fact that he made himself an immortal object so he could only lose so much health. And I didn't notice that in the anime. Like, I had to wait for the characters to explain it. I thought it was cool. I did. I really liked that part. All right, my hands are off my headphones so you can listen again. But that's kind of the thing that disappointed me. There were a lot of cool concepts in this anime and a lot more potential that they just didn't follow through with. So now to talk about what I most disliked about this anime, and it might mesh together a few different things, and of course, as always, I might jump around to other topics. But one of the things that most bothered me is the fact that if you watch the opening, like the opening song and everything of this anime, it shows all of these characters. It shows... I have a notepad of names. I have to address this. So I know that it shows Kirito, Asuna, Silica, Klein, and I don't know how to say his name in English, so Egiru. He's the black merchant guy. So it showed them in the opening, and this is what I really wanted from this series, and what I expected to happen, what I was disappointed about when it didn't happen. Oh, I think it showed the blacksmith girl too, Elizabeth, I think. Either way, it showed a number of those characters. What I wanted to happen was Kirito is shown at the beginning as a solo player. He works alone, he's afraid he's gonna get people killed, that kind of stuff, or at least doesn't want to watch people die, people that he gets close to. And what I wanted to happen after Sachi was that he started to let go of that, at least after a while, and over time, he would find these people who he had come close to over the course of, you know, their adventure in Sword Art Online, and they would form a party within the video game. And I wanted it to be, you know, the merchant, because again, his name, Klein, Asuna, Lisbeth, Silica. I wanted them all to become a party and to work together to beat the final boss and get out of the game. That's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be that character development of, you know, like, I'm scared that I'll hurt my friends. I can't bear to watch this kind of thing. It happened, but she forgave me. She doesn't blame me. I found these other friends who are strengthening me as I helped strengthen them, and we're all working together and we're gonna save the day. But it didn't play out that way. Instead, you get these brief introductions to pretty cool characters, I thought, and they would show up just like 1 or 2 episodes, or I mean, some appeared a little more often, like Klein appeared fairly often, but that was kind of it. They were just kind of left there after that, and like they never joined together, and the other characters, most of them didn't play a really significant part. Like Silica, I think you only see her for 1 or 2 episodes. Lisbeth again, 1 or 2 episodes. Klein, Egidu, they played a little bigger part, but it still wasn't what I wanted at all. And this is one of those things where my ignorance of future, you know, like arcs and everything of the future series will kind of bite me, because I don't know, obviously, if those characters are going to come back. If they don't come back and play a more significant role in the future of this anime, I am going to be peeved. I will really be annoyed, because that's just such wasted potential there. It's already wasted within this plot arc, I think, so to, like, continue that is just, you know, a bigger flaw. It's already a flaw, it would be even bigger. So I wanted that part. I wanted them to all come together and form a party, because that would work well for character development, it would work well for story development, and it would actually help you reach the climax of the story in a meaningful and, you know, understandable way. Instead, they decided to rush the entire story, and at this point, again, I'm gonna cover my ears. If you don't want to hear the big spoiler, then don't listen to this part until I move my hands. So, how it ended was that they weren't even on the last level. And one of the things that really bothered me was just the huge time skips within this series, but they weren't even on the last level. And then they find out that Heathcliff is, you know, the developer. And then he's all right, well, if you can beat me in a duel, then I'll just end the game here. And so Kirito fights him one-on-one, and Kirito loses. However, due to his love for Asuna, which, you know, isn't even really ever explained as to why he loves her, even though I can buy that he does when he does, but it's not explained how he falls in love with her. Due to his love with her, he apparently can circumvent the mechanics of the game, you know, like how a game functions. His love supersedes that, and he's able to come back and then give, you know, a finishing blow. So he cheated, and it was stupid. It was just so stupid. I really didn't like it. I really didn't like it. This is what I want to see from this anime. And I say this knowing that it won't happen, because things have already happened that would prevent this from happening. So I guess this is what I wanted to see from this anime. And if I could change it, I would go back and make it like this. I would have the entire anime, every season, in Sword Art Online, the video game. No one would get out of the game until the very end of the series. That would be it. So the entire series, under my control, would have been in Sword Art Online. I would have paced it a lot differently. I would have actually shown more of going through the floors, because one thing that tripped me up while watching this series is I'm like halfway through and it jumps to way ahead, you know, floor-wise. And I'm like, oh, okay, so they're really gonna focus a lot of episodes on these last, you know, few floors. No, they didn't. They just skipped. So I would actually want to show a lot more of the floors, a lot more of the monster fights, you know, the boss fights, a lot more, again, of Kirito teaming up and actually bonding with the people that he's traveling with. And I would actually show the progression in the video game where we can connect, because when it's as rushed as it is, I can't feel the full tension. You know, like, some people are wanting to go home, other people are actually wanting to stay because that has become the reality for them. The game has become reality. And so when you rush it like this, when you skip this many floors and you don't show all the fights and all the tension and you don't get to see all the people who are dying along the way, you lose a lot of that. And so that's why, even though I enjoyed this series, I liked what I saw for the most part. I obviously have my complaints, as I've said in this video. I was really disappointed because it just could have been so much better. And again, I haven't seen more plot arcs. I've only seen the first 14 episodes, but it didn't work for me. As much as I enjoyed it, and, you know, I'm looking forward enough to seeing the rest, but I'm really hesitant too, just because I know what just happened. It was just disappointing. I thought it had a really cool concept and it had a lot of potential, and I feel like the potential was wasted because they had other ideas, or because they forced things, because they did not explain enough, because they rushed things along, and it made it worse. I would so much rather, instead of jumping around to different games or to the game and then reality, because I don't know where it's going to go from here, I would much rather have just focused more on the world of Sword Art Online. He created a beautiful thing. What was his name? Akihiko, you know, he created Sword Art Online. He became a god of his own world. All these different floors, with different monsters, with different towns, with different cultures and everything. He created all that, so show us what he did. And show us the characters' struggles as they try to go up. Show us the internal struggles of whether or not they really want to leave. Show us the pain and everything that's caused by seeing your friends die along the way and having to ask, is it really worth it? Having it rushed like this, it just diminishes that. And I know that I'm repeating myself at this point, because that's really all I have to say. They should have shown more of the characters. They should have shown more of the characters bonding. They should have shown more. Don't spread yourself too thin. Take the time to decide what you want to focus on, and then focus on it, and then really go in depth into detail, flesh it out as you're telling your story. That's what I wanted, and that's what did not happen with Sword Art Online. Right now, I believe that's all I have to say, so I'll just say one more thing before I wrap this up for good, and that is that my little brother and I, we talked briefly about whether or not we would actually go into Sword Art Online if we had the chance. And that's with every limitation again, where if we went in, we wouldn't be able to go out until we beat the game, and if we died in the game, we would die in real life. Knowing that, we both said that we probably would go into the game. Again, for what they showed, it's an amazing world, and you might say it's dangerous, and there are monsters, and there are player killers and everything. They're like same kind of thing in real life, you know, with wild animals and with murderers and everything. At least in that game, you'd have a fighting chance. I'm just saying, if someone came to kill me now, like me, I'd be screwed. But if you put me in that game where I have skills, like in like bloody sword fighting, I'm not so sure. Honestly, liking video games, and especially having a connection with like RuneScape, so I say RuneScape especially, you know, compared to other MMORPGs, because RuneScape has a very particular kind of skill set, where there are a bunch of skills, and if you train one, eventually you get enough experience where you level up, and you kind of can't lose your levels. Like, there are certain modes, but in the original RuneScape, or at least old school 2007 RuneScape, you can't go back. There's only progression, which would be great. You know, I just feel like it seems like an exciting world. I feel like I could be a better person there than I am here, or more capable at least. So if I had the chance, I very well might go in. I'd certainly talk to my family and friends. You know, my family would be the biggest concern, because I certainly would not want to leave them behind. But I wouldn't shut it out right away. So that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. Let me know what you guys thought about Sword Art Online. Again, don't spoil past the first arc. Only talk about what happens between episodes 1 and 14. If there's manga, I don't know if there is. Don't talk about that unless it's within that same arc. And, you know, don't be too mean to people in the comments. You know, arguing or, like, debating, you know, discussing opinions is fine, but when you get to flaming and trolling, that's where it's bad. So yes, what you thought about this anime, and then what do you think if you had the chance to go into Sword Art Online, again, with those same limitations, where you die and everything, where you couldn't leave unless you beat the game? Do you think you might do it? Would you at least consider it? But yes, thank you guys for watching and listening, and we're calling it here. So with all that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, of course, feel free to leave a like, comment if you're new, even subscribe. It means a lot, it really helps me out, and I would love to have you guys. So, tune in next time for my next video, and until then, take care. Cue outro, go!